Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're delighted to have you. We're missing one senator. That's pretty much the norm in Washington. At least one is gone at any given time, but we've got enough to start this particular presentation. And so let me say good evening and welcome to the 16th Annual Virginia Political History Project, sponsored by the University of Virginia Center for Politics. Now, I'm going to save the introductions of the senators for later, but we do have accompanying relatives, as I understand it. Now, Senator John Warner, by the way, tonight, we have to do this different. I try to be respectful, except in private. I try to be respectful, and in public, I call you Senator Warner. Well, tonight, you're Mark, and the other senator, when he shows up, is John. And you two can obviously call me Professor Sabato. You should hear what they call me in private. I'm getting back at it. But in any event, we have from the John camp, we have his brother, Charles Warner. Where is he? I just said it.
He's driving John.
Oh, he's driving John, okay. And Susan McGill is with him, and Charles Warner. Well, okay. And then with Mark, we have his wife, the former First Lady of Virginia, Lisa Collins, nice to see you, and also a UVA graduate. And your daughter, Eliza.
And we brought another daughter along too, Julian.
Julia, I'm sorry, Julia. It's not on the script, and I do the same thing senators do. I just read it down. I don't know what's going on.
And a family friend from Ireland.
Family friend from Ireland. That's great. I'll try to think of a reason later. Slow it down. The film you're about to watch was produced by the Center for Politics and the Community Idea Stations, and some of you might have heard, it won an Emmy Award in 2013 for Best Topical Documentary. It's a 30-minute documentary about political gridlock in Washington, D.C., and features both of our senators, and they appear throughout the presentation. The film explores the decline in civil discourse in Congress. And I don't know when we've ever had civil discourse, but it's getting worse. The news media's role, including the internet, and they're part of the problem, particularly the internet. Bob Schieffer has a great comment about the internet in this film. You're going to love it when you see it. Partisan gridlock, a vanishing commitment to reasonable compromise, declining civil engagement among the people, civic engagement, I should say, and other factors such as gerrymandering, filibustering, increased showboating, that's Senator Schumer, I think, money and the role of business, scandal, and cynicism. Boy, we covered a lot. It proposes some reforms to help restore the voice of the people to politics, what Jefferson referred to as, quote, the most legitimate engine of government. You knew we had to have Jefferson's book. Yeah. We worked hard today to find the appropriate one. This past Saturday, and I know you already know this because you follow this very closely, the Center for Politics was honored with another Emmy Award, our second. We're very proud of this, for our documentary this year entitled The Kennedy Half Century. It was a wonderful book. The movie is better, but it was a wonderful book. And it won in the category Wonderful Holiday Gift. I think you've said that many times on the Senate floor. I've heard you say it. Won this category for Best Historical Documentary from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. The film was part of a larger project that began with the book, also called The Kennedy Half Century, a free online course through Coursera and iTunes U, and amazing, I wondered whatever it worked. Amazingly, up till I think last week, more than 103,000 students worldwide from over 4 dozen countries have taken this course. Of course, the price is right, it's free. But, you know, it's delightful that many people actually took it. And we also have a mobile app. Any of you who are obsessed with the Kennedy assassination, boy, do we have something for you. Because we unearthed these things at the National Archives, and it isn't easy to unearth anything at the National Archives. We now have a mobile app that allows, through Apple, at least Apple, I think another platform, allowing users to explore the Dallas police audio tapes all day long, starting at 9:30 before Air Force One even landed in Dallas, all the way to 3:30 in the afternoon when, sadly, the plane left with the body of President Kennedy and the new President Lyndon Johnson. So if you have interest in that subject, it's like a time tunnel. You're going to be drawn back into the events of that horrible day, that tragic day, but a day that had tremendous implications for the country. And last night CNN had a program about Vietnam, and the history of the U.S. and Vietnam would have been dramatically different, I believe. And I'm absolutely convinced of that after researching it. Had President Kennedy lived and served out 2 terms instead of President Johnson. There's no way in this war that Kennedy would have sent 535,000 troops to Vietnam. Bobby would have led him. So while we're still waiting for the other Warner, and so he's going to miss part of this film, but we can't help it. We'll fill him in the way people often do when family members fall asleep in a film. We're going to watch Out of Order, and then we're going to come back on the other side, and we'll discuss it in more depth with at least one distinguished guest, and hopefully both. So I hope you enjoy our Emmy Award-winning film, particularly you, Michael Bubis, looking for a job. I hope you enjoy Out of Order. Wonderful. And let's welcome our second senator, John W. We're delighted to see him. Before I forget, the original idea for this film came from him. He made a suggestion as we were talking about the changes that had taken place in the Senate since he joined it in 1979. He is our second longest serving senator in Virginia history. I won't mention the longest serving one because he's dead. And
well, I'm not dead yet. You might mention after I die too.
Well, I will mention, I promise, every time we show this film. But he said, you know, things have changed and not for the better, and you ought to do something like that. So I always do what he says. I never do something. I'm not careful about that. Look, we just saw a film, but what studio do you think of when Casablanca, the Superman and Batman movies, the Harry Potter films come to mind? Like Warner Brothers, of course. And their latest Academy Award-winning production will be premiered right here on this stage tonight. You already know them. I've introduced them. I should add just a little bit because it would be rude not to do so. Former Senator John Warner served as Secretary of the Navy, and I really should add was in both World War II and Korea. It was pretty remarkable. And I believe volunteered. And then was elected to the Senate in 1978, serving 5 terms, and we'll talk more about his service very shortly. Senator Mark Warner was elected to John Warner's seat in 2008. It was a very confusing election. Very confusing. People had no idea which Warner they were voting for, like the other one who ran against each other. Still confused. Prior to his election to the Senate, Mark Warner had a very successful term as Virginia's governor from 2002 to 2006. Now, I've got some questions for you, and most of them relate to the U.S. Senate. That's really our topic. But before getting into the U.S. Senate, you know, I always have a surprise. You know I always have a surprise. I've got to ask you one topical question. The Washington disease that we were talking about in this film seems to have spread to Richmond. What did both of you think of Governor McAuliffe's decision today to veto parts of the Virginia budget to try to save the Medicaid expansion? And what did you think of the Republican response saying the governor's action was unconstitutional? Senator Warner, you were governor.
If I was governor still, you wouldn't be sitting in the big chair. Let me first of all say how great it is for Lisa and the girls and I to be here with John and Charles and his longtime aide-de-camp, Susan McGill, and to be with you, Larry, as well. I've not seen all the governor's reports. I do think the governor's attempt to try to say, hey, rather than our tax dollars going to Maryland and New York and Illinois, ought to be spent here in Virginia for people to get health care coverage. Makes sense, particularly when those folks show up in emergency. Will be covered then by higher costs on private health insurance, private health insurance that I've got. I'm sure John's got as well. I wish we could have found kind of a Virginia way to get through this. I think back about the time when I was governor, I had a 2-to-1 Republican legislature. And we had big budget problems. But we found a way to find a Virginia way to actually check our DNR acts for a while and get there. And I need to say, you know, kind of at the outset here, I want to thank folks like John Hager, who served in my administration. But one of the real moments in that battle we had in 2004 was when John Warner, unbeknownst to me, I knew he was coming down, didn't know he was going to stay, got up to the 3rd floor of the Capitol and gave a press conference that only John Warner could come out, and he stood up on the 3rd floor of the Capitol and said, "Politics be damned, we've got to put Virginia first." And in many ways that still represents his whole career, but it was the kind of alliance we had that allowed, I think, both sides, when we had that budget battle in Richmond, to get to a solution to earn Virginia national recognition, best named state, best state for business. But we had that ability. I hope, and I think the governor, I think we're good people, both parties in the General Assembly, but I do hope we end up with a circumstance where they can come to a conclusion rather than simply continue to fight this out.
Well, one follow-up, because you know the rules very, very well, better than anyone except those who serve as governor. Is this veto constitutional or unconstitutional, since it's not directly attached to
you know, you also know that I went to law school and never practiced a day of law afterwards. So I actually won't rely on John's legal advice more than I have not reviewed this, but I'm sure if the governor has made this decision, he's done the legal review that he feels that he will be successful in court. But I have reviewed the legal consequences.
You see how good he was at that? Really, you cannot
actually answered the question because I've actually not got the facts. So maybe occasionally we ought to get the facts before we answer the questions.
Good point. Good point. Senator Warner, what's your perspective on what you've been watching this circus unfold in Richmond, sadly, in front of the national press too? What's your view on it?
Well, it's a good old American political system that we have in this country, and it should be unfolded before the people and argued from both sides. I mean, the strength of our republic rests in our ability to have open and full discussions. So let's have at it. Now, I don't pretend to know all of the arcane ins and outs of this particular issue, but I'd like to see the governor get out, fight it through, have it out, duke it out. And that's what made this country strong and will keep it strong. So we're here tonight to duke it out, and let's get on with it.
Well, that's why I'm between you two. You separate a Democrat from a Republican, and actually are part of the solution, not the problem, in terms of working together. All right, let's get back to the regularly scheduled program, which I think Senator Warner was gently trying to suggest that we do. Bluntly, Senator, what has gone wrong in the Senate and in the Congress generally? And I'd like to start with Senator Warner because his tenure was so long in the Senate. You saw the changes. What in the heck happened over all those years to make it worse?
Well, Larry, I have to tell you that the Senate is a reflection of the thinking of the public. They said it. Now, when the wise individuals, among them our beloved Jefferson and others, put together the concept of our republic, they decided, and I think quite properly, to have 3 co-equal branches of government. Each has its sphere of authority and its responsibilities. And the Congress is but one. I feel very strongly that therein lies the strength which has enabled us, the United States, to be the longest, oldest, continuously functioning democratic form of republic on earth today. therein lies our strength. So let's have a debate and let it go on that way. I just feel very strongly that Jefferson and others who put this thing together did it right. And we have withstood the test of time. Every other government, practically, that was in existence at the time our republic, in 1789, turned the crank and started to roll, has gone into the dustbin of history. So our forefathers must have got something right. And our responsibility is to keep it that way and to make it stronger. Now today, all of us are sad, at least I am, about the inability of our Congress not to function and lead and do more important things. And I attribute that. I go back to my own career, and I'm everlastingly grateful to the citizens of this great state who have given me this opportunity. But I came at a time when America was still in the aftermath of its greatest conflict in history, and that was World War II. My father came from down here in Amherst, Virginia, a wonderful medical doctor, surgeon, served in World War I, and he schooled me. He was a graduate of Washington and Lee, as I was too. Washington Lee, across the mountain. And we both felt very strongly that you should serve your nation in public office. And he served his in World War I, and he served again at other times doing things. And I was glad to have the opportunity when I left the university here, some many years ago. I came in the fall of 1949 from Washington and Lee to join this great university. And I'm deeply indebted to this university for the training that they gave me, such wisdom as they were able to drill in my old head. But it enabled me to pursue the career that I wished to do. I started out as a law clerk, and then I was an assistant U.S. attorney, a prosecutor for a number of years, and then taken up by one of the larger firms in the nation's capital, and practiced there for a good number of years until I returned to public office in various forms as Secretary of the Navy, and then as head of the nation's bicentennial. It was a fascinating period of time, celebrating our constitutional history, and then into the Senate, where I was privileged to serve for 30 years, being the second longest serving senator in the history of our Commonwealth. And that's why I supported this fine man over here, who stepped out of the party reins to support his candidacy, because while we duped it out once upon a time, and I taught him a lesson or two, I felt very strongly that today we need the continuity as Thomas Jefferson envisioned it for the Senate and other than the founding fathers. That the senator was different. There were to only be 2 for each state, and let them come and let them pull back from the fray of American politics that take place, like you had in your film here a short time ago, and step back and take the long-term perspective of what is best for our democratic republic, not the issue of the time. George Washington one time was seated there, and he was accused of everything is cooking along too fast. And Washington said, oh no, you know, this nation should take its time to think through carefully its pieces of legislation. And that's why we have the 2 branches. The House grips it and seizes it and acts. The Senate ought to sit back and reflect on it and take their time and make their decisions slowly. And that's the way we work in the Senate. But I'm just darn glad we're here tonight. The 2 of us, we'll duke it out here. We don't agree on everything. But we do agree on what's best long-term for this great nation. And there was a time when we could all sit around and diddle and twiddle our fingers. But unfortunately, this world in my brief lifetime has changed dramatically. I reflected a little bit on the university today. I came here as a veteran of World War II, having finished Washington Lee, drove to the mountain, and started here. I reflected on it, how things were more casual in those days. And yes, the Senate used to have prolonged filibusters, and they'd sit for a long time and look at things. But today, we live in a society where communications are instantaneous, where wars can spring up overnight. We're now in the midst of a terrible situation as it relates to the Middle East, where we've invested so much blood and treasure. I mean, the years that I served in the Pentagon, we were in Vietnam for years, and then in the Senate, it was the Iraq War, and then the Afghanistan War, and those things have taken a heavy toll of our treasure of life and limb and largesse. And today we don't have the pleasure of sitting back and filibustering and debating it, and this Congress today has been basically inactive for the last few years, and not coming to grip with the serious issues of time and helping to resolve them in a timely way. Now, I guess I'm taking too much time, so the old boy had to have a chance to let it.
Absolutely. You know, you have that long history. We want to learn from it. We'll turn to you're right. Just the younger people in here, these two ran against each other as the Democratic and Republican nominees for U.S. Senate in 1996. And the famous bumper sticker was Mark, not John.
That people thought was somebody came to me and said, "Is that a biblical reference?"
Very good. But I think we should note that the senior senator was able to win that election, although it was closer than expected, which, you know, pushed somebody into the governorship.
Virginians hired the right one.
You heard him say it. You heard him say it. You deeply regret what you did in 1996.
No, I said you did the right thing at that point.
Okay, didn't inhale. Let me ask you, Senator Mark Warner. Now, you've been in the Senate only since early 2009, and Senator Warner left at the same time. And so maybe you haven't seen some...
Only after he checked in with me to see whether or not I wanted to run against him.
True statement. True statement.
Wait a minute, I got the floor. But he very respectfully called me up and said that he would contemplate a Senate run, but only if I decided I wasn't going to seek a sixth term. That was a tough decision because, if I may say with a modest immodesty, I hit a high watermark. I'd been chairman of the Armed Services Committee, a ranking of that committee, powerful committee, for 17 years. And I was on a roll. But I turned 80, and I had seen some of the octogenarians in the Senate. And no names mentioned, but they were not functioning. And you know, that place has changed. It used to be you could shuffle around in there and take your time. But not today. You've got to move, and we need quick decisions, and we need active people. And I felt I had a good run at it, and I made my decision and called him up and said, "I'm not going to run." And off you took. And I was delighted. And I had to make a decision last fall, early on, and was I going to get involved in this next election, not running myself again or anything like that, but was I going to support someone? And I basically, when I stepped down right here at the rotunda, I selected this as my place to announce that I wasn't going to run again. And I walked down those steps and stood under those trees, and thanked Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and thanked the university for the training they give me, and said, I've done 5 terms, I've set the record as the second longest serving, and I felt it was time for me to move on. And that I was going to get out of politics, and I pretty well did, all across the board, get uninvolved in politics. But this fine man came along, I watched him from a distance, and I felt that he had done his duty as best he could. He tied around the donkey in the Democrats, I understand that. But they bucked him off a couple of times. And, but he has shown the ability to cross that aisle and work as did I, time and time again for what was best for America, best for Virginia, and solved those things, and I felt he was entitled to it, so I said for what little value would be, I would support you, and I did. And we had a long talk way back in October, November, when you were thinking through that campaign. And I guess we made a little announcement that stirred up a few feathers here not long ago, but anyway, he's on his own. This country is going to have this state's going to have a good Senate race. You got a strong opponent for a chance. Good, strong opponent. So they'll duke it out, and the best man will win. Where he goes.
I think Ed Gillespie could use that little segment on the TV, and we'll see whether it shows up to balance things out.
Best thing for me would be to say thank you, Senator Warner, and leave after that.
But you're not. You're going to stay and answer some more difficult questions. I want to know, since you got in, I want you to name, and don't tell me about general groupings of senators. I want to know specifically who are the constructive senators in each party who do try to reach across the aisle and work to get things done, and who are the obstructionists in each party. And I want specific names, and I'm going to insist that you answer the second part of it. I have to be tough since you're being so sweet.
Well, you can insist.
Sweet? Hey, man, I'm a Marine. Don't you use that word.
You have your water.
You can see why he won every debate with me when we debated. I think there are a lot more people of goodwill of both parties up there than the press reports. I do think it's a little weird that any time now in the Senate when you work with somebody on the other party, in a group, you're immediately called a gang. Working the only place in America where being a gang member is a good thing. But I'm proud of the fact, one of the issues that I think is the defining issue of our time is making sure we don't leave our kids with a balance sheet that's as out of whack as it is right now. And Lord knows that's going to require Democrats and Republicans on both sides. So when Saxby Chambliss in Georgia stepped up and said, Mark, I'll be your partner. You tell the Democrats we need income reform, I'll tell the Republicans we need more revenues. Saxby works. Bob Corker from Tennessee. He and I partnered on financial reform. Lamar Alexander and I. We actually, to the consternation sometimes of the so-called leadership in both parties, we get dinners, 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans together, because as Evan Bayh mentioned, most of the time everybody wants to separate you to red shirt, blue shirt, and we just have dinners every 6 or 8 weeks together, a couple glasses of wine. You're amazed how many things you can find in common, how hard it is to call somebody a name the next day if you've talked about your families and your kids. Every piece of legislation, major piece of legislation I work on, I start with a Republican partner. Not because it makes it intellectually better, but because, as Bob Schieffer said, I don't think the American public trusts either party at this point enough to give them a blank check. So if you start from the center and build out, that's where things get done. On the Democratic side, there's lots of folks. I'm not going to name the folks who are on the extremes. You can go through here, everybody. You can look at folks who run and spend all their time just running down the opposite side. And there are people in both parties who do that. Larry, you're the commentator. You can call them out. But it will take, I know we're going to get to this later and go through some of the challenges of how we got here. But the end point was, you all got a right to be angry at the politicians and at the media and even the political commentators. But we all have to take responsibility as well. It's our country. You keep voting for people who take these silly pledges, whether it's I pledge never to raise taxes or I pledge never to touch Medicare. You're going to get more of what we've got. If we aren't willing, one of the things that surprised me, and I wasn't naive coming to politics, I worked on Capitol Hill as a kid, was governor, got my tail beat by John Warner in '96. But I was shocked when I got here in 2009 how much it was red shirt, blue shirt team. But sometimes if we don't get out of our own personal political foxholes, and that occasionally means even in the Republic of Charlottesville, but if you're a Democrat and there's a Republican who stands up and does something right, say on revenues, support him. If you're a Republican and there's a Democrat who stands up on entitlement reform or some other issue, it's out there and support them. Until we reinforce with our own actions what we say we want in terms of our elected officials, of putting our country and the Commonwealth first, you know, all the other problems, the money and the internet and redistricting, they are huge problems. But it's still, as John said, you know, the founders set up a country that required compromise. And it's your country every bit as much as it is ours. So we all bear responsibility to getting back on the right path.
You know, your leader, Harry Reid, the majority leader, is known as one of the most partisan, and of course he has tremendous power in scheduling the Senate and in disciplining some of you who try and reach across the aisle. Is that not true? Isn't your majority leader part of the problem?
I've been put in time out a few times, but
I don't honest on that, seriously. Mark has taken hits within his party. The Democrats they have a sort of a more flexibility than the Republicans. And Republicans, we have a pretty stern rule. You seniority, you move up, you become chairman. And I was very fortunate to become chairman of the Armed Services Committee, which meant so much to our state. And I was there for 30 years. But you've taken some hits, and your party, if you don't do exactly what the leadership says, you got to kind of wait your turn. It took you a little time to get on that finance committee where your brains are really important on the issues of taxation and fiscal responsibility, which are very dear to this state. I want to back up the wagon here just a minute, Dr. Sabato. I have a word or two about you.
oh, good. I'm going to buckle on that as well.
Shake this thing up a little bit here. I came into this business as some 36 years ago. And Larry was pretty well established then. And I tell you, I look forward each year to coming here and being part of his forum, sitting down there in the old hall. I wish you kind of held this meeting there, but anyway, it was wonderful. We had that old mic, and I'd strap that mic on, I'd go up and down those aisles with those students, and they would have at me. But that's good old-fashioned politics. And this university, which endowed me with so many wonderful things in my lifetime, and I'm everlastingly grateful to this university and to the faculty and to the wonderful people who took care of me in law school. I came back from Korea. I had to drop out of law school and go to Korea for 2 years. Well, not all of it in Korea, but for a tour there. And came right back and went right to school, and there was magnificent Dean Ribble and Harley Dillard and Spies and Wolfs, and I can do all those marvelous professors we had. They took me in tow and said, we're going to get you through, and they did. And I don't forget those things. But you've done a remarkable chapter for this university in terms of its politics and open-mindedly teaching about the values of political participation. That's why we're here tonight. And I thank each of you. There must be things going on in this community tonight that are a lot more fun than coming down here and just three pals sit up here and rattle away for a while. But it's so important today. We are the oldest democratic republic still functioning in this world. Now, one time I said that, and yes, Switzerland is older, but Napoleon went over there and knocked them out of business for 3 years. And then decided it was too damn cold, packed up his troops and went home. But our republic is there because people like you will step in and take charge and participate in forums and then express your wrath, but vote. And that's the strength of this republic today. And I'm just delighted, Larry, that you've done what you've done. I hope you continue here, and you've got a great heritage. And now you just have to chew up on somebody else besides me for a while.
Right here.
Is there a question pending?
Well, I want to say Senator Warner did come to this 101 class that I taught, and there are 400 or 500 in there every semester, and he just loved running up and down the aisles. I think you got your exercise that way.
I did.
But calling on students, he didn't give a long speech. He just simply let the students ask him questions. And students ask tough questions. They could care less. There isn't a lot of polish to the questions, a lot of politics to the questions. And he did wonderfully, and I've also had this Senator Warner in that class a number of times as well. So we appreciate very much that both of you came. Now you might want to see and raise his compliments. You have a chance to think.
John's at that stage where he can say nice things. I'm still in the business. So
All right. So getting back to our subject.
yes, sir.
Let's seriously talk about what some of you have mentioned names and not others. I understand why you don't want to get into particular senators, though I wish you would. It's juicy. But say a Ted Cruz, just to mention one. I had him in class this past semester. When Ted Cruz does what he did, we all remember the filibuster and the all-night ham and green eggs and all the rest of it. When he does something like that, is he penalized in the Senate? Should he be penalized in the Senate?
No, when Ted Cruz actually stood up and filibustered, that was fine. Have at it. That was the way the rules should work. I think there was no problem with that. I think there was consternation when there was a view that we might have an agreement to pass forward the budget. And he actually caused, I think, some consternation amongst his Republicans by forcing a few votes. I think his consternation may be more on that side than on the Democratic side at times. But I think the issue is not if you got strong views. I mean, John said everybody's in this country should keep strong views. But the notion that you can never have common ground, our country has gone through this. John will give you the history better than I, but there have been hugely strong views held. We've fought a civil war. We've gone through a civil rights movement. We have had strong views, around the issues when John was first getting into politics, around Vietnam. But there wasn't this notion that if we disagree, even if we disagree and couldn't agree on one particular issue, the Senate and the Congress would still go forward and function on other issues. We still would produce a budget. We still would make sure there was a road bill. We still make sure the functions of government would go on. Now it seems that there is this ability to say, because we don't agree, I'm going to take my marbles and go away, and both sides do it as well. But the particular consternation and the insanity of shutting down the federal government last year because you don't get 100% of what you want, that is a politics of a different breed. And I think the only way it will be, and I think the film, there were a lot of contributing factors. The contributing factors of the obscene amounts of money, the contributing factors of a process that forces you when you get there, and the leaders of both parties, because they derive their power from the loudest voices on the extreme, and because the funders are not the funders. There is no super PAC for rational people. You can't just blame on the leaders because they push you to red shirt, blue shirt team. We have, and I have more responsibility as well. Susan Collins and I have started a group now. We call it the Common Sense Caucus. To step up against that.
How many members?
We had about 18 at one point.
Really?
We wanted to get together on a regular basis. And I think, again, the challenge, the stakes are too high. As Senator Warner's mentioned, the stakes are too high. And in a dangerous world that we live in right now, it's not only right, we only not have to get it right for our country. I'm on the Intel Committee now. John served for a long time on the Armed Services Committee. Also, he did serve for a while on the Intel Committee. The Intel Committee, you see the bad, the dirty, and the ugly. And we live in a very dangerous world right now. And quite honestly, the whole world needs America to be strong economically, militarily, and morally now. So, if anything, we have even greater responsibility at a world that's moving at internet speed. So, yes, those of us who are willing to take the arrows from both sides, we've got to step up more. I'll be the first to acknowledge it.
There's one other thing, Larry, and that is that when our great republic was established, they made the Senate and the House quite different, for good reasons. We've all heard the story, you know, Washington and Jefferson arguing about this, that, and everything, and the teacup and one thing and another. But Washington was right, you know, the teacup was there to the Senate to let issues cool out a little bit before you drank it. It was just too
Cool out, but not freeze.
But we only have, as I say, each state 2 senators. And they come for 6 years for the reason that they want to divorce them from the daily passions of politics. Let them look at the longer view. Let them take some time to think through their issues and stay with there, because you learn a lot in that institution. It takes time to learn. And what concerns me right now is, if you stop, I hold 2 records. One I'm proud of, one I'm not proud of. One is that I am the second longest serving in this state. Only one person went 32 years. The other is I'm the last United States Senator in 24 years that got reelected to a second term. Isn't that something? Every senator that I served with served 1 term. It was Paul Tribble, Chuck Robb, George Allen, Jim Whip. For various reasons, I'm not pointing fingers at them, they decided the Senate wasn't the thing they wanted to pursue. But what that left is my staff struggling with the whole state, working with members of Congress as we do, and we should have had a strong, another Senate partner with well-trained staff, but oh no, that staff was vacant and turned over every 6 years. And we right here's my chief of staff. Are you paying attention to what I'm saying? Susan McGill. She's not in politics now. She's running Mount Vernon and George Washington. Now you can give a little speech on George Washington.
My favorite talk.
But folks, we've got to get some continuity. You've got to get seniority to get up into positions like I did, where we could get things for Virginia. You've got to do it. And flip-flopping that seat every time is not the wisest thing. And it's up to you this time. We got a good opponent, okay, that's fine, I said that. But you've got to decide the value of having some continuity and seniority for our state. Our state will go to position number 1, the lowest in seniority, if this man is not reelected. It's as simple as that. And we look at this state. You can take Frank Wolf, I'm going to speak on his behalf tomorrow, his retirement. 34 years he was there. Jim Rand, Democrat, 28 years. We just had the gentleman in Richmond, Eric Cantor, he had a dozen or so years. That's seniority that helps this state make sure it gets its proportionate share of the largesse. And you're losing it in this state. You're losing it. So that should be a factor that people should consider as they go into that voting box. Pick whom you think's the best man. But I think one that has proven himself an ability to cross the aisle, willing to stay, willing to continue, deserves that attention that you're going to give it in converting with this.
I've got to, again, try to balance this thing by focusing negatively on you. Well, let me ask one more question.
On me for a while.
No, because I only have good things to say about you.
Okay.
We're old friends. The last question.
After I retired, we were friends.
Yes, you had several choice words to apply to me at various points during your term. All of them justified. But the question I'm going to ask before I open it up, see if any of you have a few questions you want to ask before we adjourn. We talked about, you know, what's good, what's bad, but what really concretely can be done? Realistically, are there rules and procedures that can be changed in the Senate and should be changed that would make that body work better? Or maybe it's the Congress as a whole, or maybe it's the maybe we need revisions to this brilliant system that worked well, 200 and X years ago, but doesn't work very well anymore in some respects. What would you like to change?
Let me give you one specifics. I'll give you specifics. Campaign finance reform in a way that doesn't allow nonpartisan redistricting. That the vast majority of us elect rather than just the primary. A recognition in the Congress that we've got to have a willingness of both sides to kind of control some of their extremes. The nature of the Senate has always worked. But the old rules worked because both sides viewed each other with a little comedy, I-T-Y, not E-D-Y. And you had amendments, but you didn't vote on the same kind of gotcha amendments each time. You had legitimate amendments that were around the bill. The Democrats ought to open up the amendment process. The Republicans ought to not filibuster every judge and every nominee so that they never will get appointed, because there'll be a Republican president, it'll come back. So both sides need to do a bit more in terms of making the institution work. I'm not sure there's a rule change alone. I know many in the room change the filibuster rule. I don't think the Senate ought to be turned into the House. But the filibuster worked because it was used sparingly on issues of great importance, not every time. So there are some specifics. I think we all, my admonition to people is, I don't care what party you belong to, but don't hire anybody to sign for these stupid pledges. Same thing is reinforce, vote for somebody normally not of your party occasionally to reinforce good behavior. Recognize that neither Fox or MSNBC tell you the whole truth. And I was a technology guy, but as was pointed out, the amount of stuff in the 21st century that people repeat as gospel just because they saw it on the internet is insane. One of the hardest things to do at this point, and this sounds, John's got me going a little bit, it's when you're in a social setting or at work or at school or at church or when somebody says something stupid that's factually wrong, call it out.
Yep.
Because too often people say things, then it gets into the political dialogue and it gets repeated and repeated and repeated. And suddenly we're debating a whole host of issues that in the past, as Schiefer said in the article, there is no editor on things. So sometimes we have to actually, and that's hard to do. It's hard to do in a social setting. Nobody wants to talk politics all the time. Even Larry Sabato.
I love it all the time.
I think there are laws we can change, processes we can change. I'm not sure there's, I asked John on the rules, if there's a particular rule, but I'm not sure there's a magic rule change other than both sides being willing to kind of rein in their extremes.
So, well, I'll give you a challenge here. I would let your institution here, politics at this university, begin to sit down over a period of some months and study very carefully and draft a constitutional amendment, which it will require, to put a balance into campaign contributions. I'm not going to try and give you the framework of it, but only a constitutional amendment will begin to right this ship so that the little person that puts in $50 at the potluck dinner, they can feel that $50 is just as important as the guy that puts in $5 million out here somewhere at the end of the internet system that you don't know who it is. But that, I think, is the only way we're going to do it. And somebody ought to sit down and just gather up all of the factors and meld a draft amendment and say, okay, Congress, you do it better. And throw it to them. Give it to them. I'd like to bring up very quickly. I did belong to a generation called the Greatest Generation, which was World War II. I was just in the tail end. coming through the training command, and both wars ended. But then as I moved forward in life and through my university training at Washington Lee at UVA, I noticed that we were heavily World War II veterans. We got the GI Bill, which was one of the best things this country ever devised. And as I moved along and up to the Senate, I caught the very end of what we call the World War II generation that dominated the Senate. They were held together by common experiences in that war. And they were held together by the common experience of what took place on the home front. I mean, how many real people in this room remember we had gas rationing, we had food rationing, we had strong discipline in this country to get through that critical period of history and let this great republic begin its role of leadership unlike any other nation in the world subsequent to that conflict. And that was reflected in the Senate. 3/4 of the senators that I served with when I first went to the Senate, 3/4 of them had worn uniform. Now, I'm not disparaging the others. They were young ones that had come along, or for various reasons they weren't here. But that gave us a cohesiveness. And those of us who've had the privilege of serving in uniform learned one thing. You are trained and embedded with the idea that you've got to have confidence in yourself, in your own decision making. You've got to have respect for the fellow or the woman that's next to you. As we used to say, in that foxhole, muddy and dirty as it is, the person on your right and the person on your left is going to save your bacon. So when you get that hole as we did, we all came back and we enjoyed the fruits of a revolutionary economy in this country. We work together to get solutions. And we've got to go back and re-examine the roots of our country, how we did great things in that period, and make them happen now. That doesn't mean everybody has to go back in the uniform again to learn it. By golly, you can learn it by just studying the seriousness that this world is gripped in right now with terrorism. And cybersecurity, and all of these things have come along with the magnificence of innovation and engineering and achievement are now beginning to erode our sense of freedom, our sense of privacy, and other things. So we've got to get a generation just as powerful as the one that came out of World War II to deal with these problems as we go forward if we're going to survive as a nation and enjoy the many things that the good Lord has blessed us with. End speech.
I think we have drunk deeply from senatorial wisdom. And I want to see what you have to say to these senators. And so, to direct your question, I see you first. You were anxious.
I am.
I want to see.
Shake your fist.
Shake
your fist a little bit.
Should I start now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think the system needs some work, and I want to refer to Mann and Ornstein's book that came out a year or two ago. I think it was called "It's Worse Than You Think It Is" or something like that. One of the recommendations they made was to stop this business of rolling into town in D.C. on Monday night and working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then blowing off. That works for Joe Biden. He could zip back to Wilmington. But everybody else, or Minnesota and Arizona, it's impossible. They can't work like that. So their recommendation, and I want to know what you two senators think, was that we have a different structure to the work weeks. They come in for 3 weeks at a time and they stay in Washington. They don't sleep in their offices as Newt Gingrich persuaded the class of '94 to do. They rent places, they live, they socialize, they have dinners, they drink wine together. And then the 4th week of every month, they go back to their districts and they do a little fundraising or they do whatever they do, a little politicking and handshaking. What do you think of changing the structure of the work weeks? All year long, except maybe Christmas, the beginning of December.
What do you think? It's a good suggestion.
Well,
Not mine.
the advancement of electronics and now the media situation is so different than when I was there. And the urgency to compete in this world. You realize we're a one world global market. Not only for politics, freedom, but eco-learning. This morning I was privileged to be a part of a very significant panel that addressed 25 African American individuals who were part of 500 now visiting the United States, learning how to bring that continent up into the 21st century and to share in its benefits. Very interesting group of young people who had achieved, I mean, they're in their 30s and 40s, some of them, who have achieved a status in their country. There were 5,000 people who competed for 500 slots to come to America. And we here, we've got 25 visiting. But the world has changed so dramatically. I don't know that you can just start the weeks and the changing of things. You've got to come to recognition of the competition the world is giving us and the need to act in concert with the rest of the world. Yes, while we sleep, the other half is awake, trying to figure out every way possible to take away our trade and the things that we enjoy. So I think step by step, but I like your fervor, and we ought to consider everything we can.
I would,
Go ahead.
I would say, I'm in favor of trying that. I mean, the challenge, though, is it's easy for us from Virginia to say. It does, though, say, I don't know how you can force somebody, if they live in Delaware, or they live in New York, or they can get a flight back, versus the poor guy or gal who lives, my friend John Tester from Montana, it's 11 hours door to door he goes each week. You talk about public service, this man still tries to farm, he was a school teacher, that's real devotion to our country. I don't know if it could work. I love the notion of the idea, but I don't know how you can force people in a day and age with this much ability to travel. I mean, if there was a way as well, we could think about a flip on that would be...
It would be easier in the Senate because your term is longer.
Amen. And there are people who still stay in the
Senate.
Senate. And it's remarkable. The people who were there, still when John were there, most of them still have all come up quietly saying, I've lived most of my life in Virginia. Now that ends up coming back and hurts them because some of them trying to run again. But, an idea like that, though, it would be worth trying.
If I could say one thing, this week, the bipartisan Senate, there's a group of about a dozen senators, long retired, who have sat down and began to think through these issues that you point out, and they're going to report this week. And I hope, Larry, that you step forward and give some constructive comment on the report they're going to issue later this week. I'm going to be present when they roll it out. But there's good thinking going on the very issue that you raised by a lot of people.
Good.
That's encouraging. Let me get a couple more questions. Right up, this young lady over here, and then this gentleman. You're both together, so makes it easy, and I don't want to let you run all over the auditorium.
Hi, I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Pat. My question kind of relates a little bit to yours, like changing the system. And I read A More Perfect Constitution.
You got to raise that voice a little bit. You came out with a boomer, and then you.
I read A More Perfect Constitution.
It's an excellent book.
And talking about changes within the system and the growing cynicism. Do you think the change is going to come from within Congress eventually, or is it going to be more like a populist, states-based effort? And also kind of a side comment, would it also, like, the nature of the legislation has changed, would you say? Like, there's more of an emphasis where people really, the media really want to focus on social issues, where it seems harder to find common ground. Thank you.
Very good. Who wants to
I'll
part of that?
I'll start. I mean, I think that in many ways, the 2010 election was this kind of wave of let's throw them all out, populism, Tea Party. And I understand a lot of the anger, but it wasn't like throwing everybody out led to a solution. It led to more gridlock. The thing that we've kind of indirectly touched on, and the question of whether it happens at the state level or the federal level, and whether it's government, some of these debates, big government, little government, they got to be effective, appropriate, value-add government at whatever level. There's a lot of things that can be done at the community level. There's a lot of things that should be done at the state level. I mean, the fact that we have 47 different workforce training programs is crazy. They ought to be consolidated and moved down into a lower number. And what works in Charlottesville is going to be different than what works in Northern Virginia. And we ought to give that kind of flexibility. Frankly, a lot of the Democrats oppose that, but I think that's where we need to move to be more effective. But there are things that can only be solved at the national level. And the fear that I have is that when, I know everybody wants to turn off the TV, except for in Charlottesville on a Friday night this hardcore. God bless you for being here tonight. But you want to put something at the TV and just turn it off. But if we default, we do default to the extremes. Or if we default and say, oh gosh, Washington can never get anything right, if that becomes our view, and what we're really saying is, can our country ever take on a big problem again and solve it? And that scares the dickens out of me. I'm a big private enterprise guy. I spent more time as a business guy than I did on public side. I'm all for private enterprise, but there are some things that you need a national, from immigration to defense policy, to getting our balance sheet right, to entitlements, that you have to reach some national consensus on. And that has to come out of Washington. That's a rambling answer to the question, but sets up Senator Warner for the last word on that point.
No, another question. Let's give a full answer.
I appreciate it. That's good. But listen, the truth is, the changes have to come from you.
Yeah.
Really.
I think
Not the senators. They have to come from you. Otherwise, they're going to happen on the 12th of never. Count on it. Let's get this gentleman here.
I'd like to dovetail on the two ladies, which I thought the first lady had the subject that I've been talking about for 10 years. And my first suggestion would be to remove the aisle. Possibilities on that? Oh, another thing too. I heard there was going to be a baseball game on that screen. Is everybody going to stay? But I think that point that the senators are not spending the time in Washington and doing their homework. When I was in school, when I was in college, we were to D.C. and we see groups of senators together, having a cold beer, not misbehaving, but just talking. And I don't know whether they were Democrats or Republicans or independents, but they talked and they did communicate. That would be one thing that I would love to see, is the aisle just disappear, see them alphabetically. I don't know how you'd ever accomplish it, but anyway.
No, hey, there are certain committees that have tried that, and I think that, maybe start with the committee structure. But you got to build relationships, and part of this just comes back to the time that you got to spend with each other, and not just with your own red shirt, blue shirt team. Amen.
There was a much higher level of camaraderie, comity, and friendship when I was there. There's no question about it. But it's this question of money that has driven these men and women in the Congress to go back home and raise that money and go elsewhere. This is a serious problem, this huge money in politics. And it can only be addressed with a constitutional amendment. Supreme Court has ruled, open the floodgates.
Or maybe a few different Supreme Court justices.
Like what?
Or maybe a few different Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
Well, you better pedal back there and just...
He's going far afield. Look, one quick question, though. Seriously, for people who don't know, how many hours, on average, in a day, do Democratic senators and Republican senators leave the Senate and go down to their senatorial committee or the national committee and do dialing for dollars? People need to know this. This is a work day in Washington. How many hours a day do they dial for dollars?
In election year, I've been blessed not to have to do it as much as many, but I know many senators on both sides that spend 3 or 4 hours a day. I am blessed to live in I've had some business success. I have a great family and a pretty good run as governor. I get to do this on terms that very few people do. I'm extraordinarily lucky. But I still, in a campaign year, 15 fundraisers a week? And that's less than many of my colleagues. And again, I don't want to say this is the only problem we've got. We have a series of issues. But it is one of the most traumatic things that's changed probably over the last 30 or 40 years.
And our country is way apart from other nations in the world that have some form of democratic. For instance, Great Britain, they have specified times. I think your campaigns are 90 days. It's over. You can only raise so much money. And it works.
I appreciate your giving. That was an honest answer, and it's important that people know how much time is being wasted by your elected representatives daily in fundraisers and on the phone begging for money. I don't think that's why you elected them. Let me get maybe one more question.
I can assure you also, the reason I want to run. You know, and most of these folks, don't, you know, it is too easy. There are huge challenges. And again, I get to do this in terms that very few people do. But there are great, I mentioned Zachary Chambliss, political courage. I give you Dick Durbin from Illinois, who's pro-labor and progressive as any member of the Senate, being willing in Illinois and Chicago to say to the unions and the AARP, hey, Medicare and Social Security, if we don't fix them, they're going to go broke. That's political courage. Zachary Chambliss in Georgia saying we need more revenues. That's political courage. There are people, don't paint the brush. It's too easy to say, oh, they're all a mess. And the amount of time that people spend on these jobs, you know, they are not exiting from their other duties. In the election year, yeah, but think about it in the House.
It's
you
got
never
worse.
stop.
It's got to be worse.
In the House, it's worse.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, there was a couple. We got
a couple more questions back here. All right, way in the back. One of them. I can't see which hand it is, but somebody's got their hand up.
Is there a way to manage?
Could you stand, please, so we can hear you?
I'm wondering, in the context of what we've been talking about, is there a way to mandate that people be assigned, say, in a new session of the Senate or the House, for that matter, with a group from the other side, eight Republicans, 8 Democrats, assigned to a group that's not necessarily part of a committee. It's just a group to figure common ground, and everybody be assigned to that at the beginning of the term. And that simply is a way of building cohesion and camaraderie. Is that feasible? How might it be done?
You know, they have, as they come in, you get a new class, and they have a welcoming session and stuff. But you can't force camaraderie. And you know, it's been, you know, quite honestly, it's hard in both parties. But I think it's even been harder in the Republican Party recently because of the penalty you pay. You know, one of the things that we're seeing now is that if you over-redistrict too much, it'll come back and bite you. So there may be this notion. I mean, what happened in California, Evan Bayh got it a little bit wrong in that they actually didn't change, because they couldn't get the votes to change the redistricting process. They kept the same partisan redistricting process. I still think it would be better to do an independent redistricting process. But they kept the partisan redistricting. They just said, first 2 past the post on primary day get into the general election. So there are a variety of ways to force this, but I'm not sure you can force friendships.
But it's a good idea. You know, we might want to maybe tentatively try something like that with senators who voluntarily want to participate. I think
well, those groups do. They do exist. There is more of this camaraderie again than people represent. But there is nothing in the system at this point that supports the kind of compromise. Everything from the redistricting to the finances to the, you know, the party establishments on both sides, leadership, try to push in the opposite direction. And the schedule is part of it as well.
All right, I want one terrific concluding question. I mean, really terrific. And the pressure's on you if you raise your hand and you disappoint us. Really, you'll never get elected to anything. Okay, I saw this hand up over here. Boy, you really, you know, you're putting the pressure on yourself. People like it.
Well, he's wearing a good old UVA big orange.
Stepping away from the current perspective in getting a larger historic perspective over the last 200 years, haven't we gone through cycles of polarization and cooperation that's not necessarily unique to our current situation? I'm not a historian, so I don't know. But if there is that sort of historical perspective, what have we learned that creates the shift from a polarization to more of a cooperation perspective in the Congress?
I'd like to that's an important thing. Then our history, political history, is replete, filled with chapters. When there were deadlocks in the Congress and prolonged filibusters and all sorts of things to kind of exercise our wonderful democracy. But what has changed is the world has changed to where it's a far more dangerous place. My father had been in World War I in the trenches as a doctor. He understood war and feared war, but he felt that the field artillery bases that circled Virginia and our coast would protect us. Brilliant man. And we're in an open society. Now it's no longer the field artillery trying to protect us. When I was Secretary of the Navy, there were submarines 400 miles off the coast of Virginia with a load of missiles that could have taken out the nation's capital in an hour. So technology has overcome the wealth, the enjoyment we had of sitting back and letting prolonged periods of Congress of inactivity take place. We need instantaneous solutions, regrettably, to defend ourselves against instantaneous attacks from unknown enemies. And we don't have the luxury to sit on our hands anymore.
Let me just add, and I agree, just a slightly different variation. I think, again, history will show, and you know, the Carroll book on LBJ points out, it was as good a history of the Senate as anything I've read, and it pointed out, historically, even in the 20th century, large periods where even the Senate, in particular, was completely ineffective on big issues. But even in those periods of ineffectiveness, it still did the basic job of passing the budget, passing appropriations bills, making sure the Highway Trust Fund didn't go bankrupt the way it will at the end of August of this summer. And somehow we've let the dysfunction on particular issues spread across the whole process. One. Two, in the past, it's been moments of crisis that have brought us together. You know, the country coming together after 9/11. You know, the solution we saw, we've all been outraged by what happened with the VA. But as John and I were talking earlier today, you know, the Congress didn't get a lot of attention. But the Congress in a bipartisan way passed a major VA reform bill in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
But what we don't have the luxury, and this is again just saying, you know, a slightly different version of what John just said, is that in the past, America had such a quantitative and qualitative and economic lead over the rest of the world that if we screwed up for a few years, it didn't really make that much difference. In a world that moves at internet speed, with 1 billion people in India and 1 billion people in China saying they want their piece, they have their rights as well in the 21st century, and everyone else saying they want, we don't have that ability to kind of lollygag around. So I hope and pray it just doesn't require another crisis. And you know, my gosh, the crisis, since I've been in one of the ones, what is my single biggest frustration was the government shutdown. Here, an economy that was barely starting to recover, and our political system was self-imposing a crisis on an economic recovery. I don't care what political party you belong to, that was just irresponsibility on steroids. So, I just desperately need force another crisis. And I think the way that we'll get this is, you know, I'm not sure we can go back to the old days, but I do believe that, you know, it's always been a bad bet to bet against America. And, you know, I've got to believe that, you know, we're going to step up again. And if not the people who are doing it now, then we've got to have other people. They've got to be people who are willing to find that common ground.
Well, I won't bet against this crowd for showing up on Friday night. Pretty incredible that you would come out. on a Friday night, but then the baseball game is another day, sir. A baseball game, in case you got your days mixed up. I'll tell you what we do need to do, though. We need to visit. I was just testing you.
There's the 32nd act of one against Sabato, right?
Don't worry, I'll be retired before they get that in. Let me thank you all for coming, but most of all, I think you want to join me in congratulating these two senators for the hard work that they have done and are doing. We have 36 years of experience in the United States Senate. People always criticize politicians. I've done more than my share, and it's okay to do that. But we also ought to recognize the good things they do. They try hard, they do listen, and we have to hold their feet to the fire. John Warner's feet are already singed, over those 30 years he's in the Senate. Mark Warner's feet really are in pretty good shape. So I think you can do whatever you wish to him after this session. Thank you all very much.